Because I can.
It's going down. I'm yelling timber. You better move. You better dance. Let's make a night. You won't remember. I'll be the one. You won't forget.
The faith of the so-called witches they're still commemorated. And I'm talking about I-E-P-E-R. Yes.
What's funny is because the Flemish eye looks like an L. Well, I can see it. It looks like clever.
Yeah.
And they say,
Yes, everything you see this morning today is new.
the oldest
Nothing-
building,
yeah.
oh sorry,
Yeah.
the oldest building rebuilt is dated 1921, but I suppose before that you'd say the oldest building. I'll go get the packed lunches anyway. Right, if you follow Jack.
The soldiers, they never said Ypres, they said wipers or Ypres. Belgium, as you know, is a very small country, a dot on a map, half a handkerchief. We do have our languages, oh yes. And I have to say, before the First World War, the French language was very, very dominant. So Ypres, which is the Dutch version, was written in French, Y-P-R-E-S. Hence, that the soldiers called it wipers or Ypres. I am Flemish, and I do appreciate that the soldiers had great difficulties pronouncing the local place names. So they did the clever thing. They gave their own names to place names. And I have to say, to this day, that causes a lot of confusion. A few examples. We have a village here called Weetschaten. The soldiers called it White Sheet. My favorite is Godewaarsvelde. Oh, they really struggled with that one. They called it, would you believe it, God wears velvet. A very important French coastal town in France was Etaples. They called it Eat Apples. I am from Poperingen, there's a little town not far from here. They called it Pop or Pops. It causes confusion. I will never forget that wonderful British lady I had in
Yep.
Hola. So what happened was, at the outbreak of the Second World War, the British end of May 1940. And the gate itself is 1927. It is 1927.
So literally we're now on the British line and the German line just literally on the other side of the bridge in front of us. We have maize crops, we grow Brussels sprouts, potatoes, carrots. Yeah, I'd have to have a look. Yeah, I'd have to have a look at them. But yeah, generally they
cemeteries would be amalgamated and only 4 in this province. A lot of remains of German soldiers were taken back to Germany. That means in this cemetery we're going to visit in a moment are buried more than 44,000 German students, soldiers. This little town here of Langemark still has a great symbolic meaning for the Germans. You might know.
Shad,
Yes,
I think we'll just move down to the right because I'm kind of like looking at all the mass populace there. And they'll probably all send forward. The Germans going on the offensive, desperate to break through, but of course they didn't break through. They took most of the high ground, the lines became static. 1915 arrived. The Germans, under the order of Kaiser Wilhelm, are now going to go on the offensive a second time here. Still desperate to break through, desperate to cut those ports off, but of course, come into 1915, we have to realise that had the Germans have ever broken through here, not
Of New Zealand, there they are again.
Always separate. Always separate. Yeah. Right. Passchendaele. You can talk days and days about that battle, but what happened is the following. German U-boats, submarines, operating from the Belgian ports Ostend and Zeebrugge, were sinking more than 20% of British ships. And the British Admiral Jellicoe warned the War Cabinet in London, you have to do something about those German U-boat bases at Ostend and Zeebrugge, they're sinking all my ships. So the British Commander-in-Chief, Haig, said, I have a plan. What we'll do is, he said, we're going to break through any Ypres salient, we take the Passchendaele Ridge, where we are now, phase 1. And he said, phase 1 we take in 1 week. I have a map here showing this. So the green dotted line is phase 1. As I said, we're going to take that in 1 week. Yeah. And then he said, when we have phase 1, we go north, we take the town of Turho, the blue line here. Phase 2, we take in 1 week. And then he said, we have a combined operation. The third phase is Navy and Army. And we take the ports of Ostend and Zeebrugge, and we take those ports, we eliminate the German U-boat threat. I have to say, the War Cabinet in London was not happy with the plan. And very, very reluctantly, they agreed with it. So that bunker is now covered by the cross of sacrifice. This was massive here. German tactic was simple. When the Germans took a position for them to Germany, they were there to stay. Preferably on a height. It's easy to defend from a height. Much more difficult to attack uphill. And they always fortify their positions. They were good at it. I have to be honest, it's easy to recognize a German bunker from an Allied one. But for safety, I would prefer the German one, I think. Yes? Plots. Yeah. This is more chaotic. As you saw, this is normal. One of the 4 is identified.
Suorista lähettiin on pitäisi kierrota.
Hang on.
Kierto moni.
There's your weeping angel section.
see them. So when we were crawling towards the opposite line, we could encounter one of these. I know it clears a shepherd in France and a battlefield got his foot pierced by one.
Ooh.
But you found them everywhere. Screw pickets. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at the trenches. So here you can see the typical zigzag pattern of a trench, and that is for safety. When you have a straight trench and enemy soldiers get in a straight trench, the field of fire they have, correct? You can shoot right through the trench. And when a hand grenade lands here, the soldier over there is more or less protected from the blast. We measured these trenches years ago. I can assure you they are on the exact position as the old ones, but they are maintained. Also, these are not as deep as they were in the First World War. A good trench could be, let's say, in feet, 3, 5, up to 10 feet deep. There's no layers of sandbags in. Yeah, trench foot, exposure of feet for long periods, trench fever. Now, you have, you had various lines at the front line, support line, reserve line, and these trenches were connected to communication trenches. Now a communication trench was always a prime target for enemy artillery, because a communication trench is not only important for the movement of troops, but also the Russians, the food comes from the
Andy's still looking at pictures.
War is so sad. I know. I've never seen anything like this ever.
Sorry. I was not mocking.
Oh, dove? I miei Ah no? In mia scuola in Stockholm. Per un anno. In second year. Sì, quando te apriste.
Y en España.
Oh, qué bueno, en España.
Granada.
Oh, qué bueno. ¿Cuántos años?
7
We need to learn how to get our grass to screen. This is ridiculous.
We are coming out of winter for the umpteenth time.
It's never the screen, even out of winter.
Oh, whatever.
Genius.
Mm-hmm.
Canadian and Australian. They could look after 4,000 patients here. Originally, it was a French hospital. You can see the French crosses. And when the British took over, let's say in March 1915, it became British. Now, we are standing here in front of an American soldier. His name is King. And I would like to read something about this particular soldier. And it is actually amazing, I have to say. It goes as follows. Harry King was a native of Wignar Park, Staffordshire, England. His parents were John and Susan King, and they lived at 65 Belgrave Road, Longton, Stoke-on-Trent. Harry had 4 brothers, Ernest, George, Reginald and Louis, and 3 sisters, Eva, Alice and Alien. In 1908, Harry's brother Ernest immigrated to America in search of a better life. Harry and his brothers Reginald and George followed Ernest to America in 1914. That proved to be a fateful year for the family when they died and the First World War broke out. Reginald returned to England late that year and joined the British Army. He served as a private in a mechanical transport unit of the Army Service Corps. Louis, the only brother who had remained in England, likewise joined the British Army and was eventually assigned to the Tank Corps. George went north from America and joined the Canadian Army. Harry stayed in America and enlisted in the United States Cavalry. By 1917, 4 of the 5 King brothers were under arms for the Allies, but serving in the armies of 3 different countries: Great Britain, Canada and the United States. Harry was assigned to the 3rd United States Cavalry's F Troop. When America entered the war in 1917, the 3rd Cavalry was one of the few standing forces the United States had available. Consequently, it was one of the early units to be sent to Europe, arriving in France in November 1917. Although horse-mounted cavalry was useless in the trenches of the First World War, the horses did play a crucial role in transporting supplies, weapons and ammunition to the front. The 3rd Cavalry spent the war taking care of those horses and resupplying the frontline troops. Harry's F Troop ran a remount depot for quartermaster and artillery units near Bourbon-les-Bains in the old Marne region of France. The Western Front was a dangerous place, even for those who did not serve in combat roles. The unsanitary conditions of the trenches were breeding places for disease. In fact, more American soldiers were killed by disease in the First World War than were killed in combat. Did you know that? Harry King became one of them when he died on 20 September 1918. His cause of death was officially listed as bronchial pneumonia, but in fact it was the Spanish flu. A disease that killed tens of millions of people between 1918 and 1920. Harry was initially buried at the Argonne American Cemetery at Romans-sur-Montfaucon So he was buried in France first. Harry's mother, Susan, initially requested that his remains be sent to England to be buried beside his father at Checkley. However, Harry's brother, Reggie, had died near Ypres on the 17th of October 1917 and was buried in the Listenhoek Convent Cemetery here. So his brother is also buried here, who fought with the British Army. Unlike the practice in the US Army, the remains of soldiers who died in the service of the British Empire could not be repatriated. When Mrs. King learned that Listenhoek was to be her son Reggie's final resting place, she changed her mind about her son Harry's burial. She requested that Harry be buried near his brother Reggie at Listenhoek. His remains were moved to Listenhoek in October of 1921. Quite a story, huh? So
Every time we remember a soldier and when we sound the last post at the Menin Gate every evening, they shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
we will remember them.
them.
So this one American soldier. Let me go to the other one. Give you a crescent, maybe. Yeah, but I don't know how universal it is. Like the cross and stuff. I'm not sure.
It's going down. I'm yelling timber. You better move. You better dance. Let's make a night you won't remember. I'll be the one you won't forget.